Howdy friends, Steve here at Mount Hope Cemetery in Franklin, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. Well, I'm just so proud to be here at Minnie Pearl's gravesite. So do you remember Minnie Pearl from the Grand Ole Opry and the TV show HEE HAW? I certainly remember seeing Minnie Pearl on TV back in the 60s when I was growing up. She was pretty much a staple of the 60s in that, signature howdy. And of course that signature straw hat with a little price tag still hanging on it. I mean, she was such a character and so lovable, and I mean, you couldn't help but love Minnie Pearl. So I really wanted to stop by and see her final resting place. According to her Find a Grave memorial page, her real name was Sarah Ophelia Colley Cannon. And she's laid to rest here at Mount Hope Cemetery in the historic town of Franklin, which I really don't know a lot about, but I keep seeing all these historical landmark signs and markers all over town, and it looks really quaint and very historic. And I'm a little frustrated because back here in Tennessee there seems to be a cemetery on just about every corner, and I only have a certain amount of time to visit the grave sites that I'm especially interested in. Minnie Pearl was born on October 25th, 1912 in Centerville, Tennessee, and died from a stroke at the age of 83 in Nashville, Tennessee on March 4th, 1996. She was known as a country music comedian and got her start in 1940 at the age of 28 with the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, Tennessee. Her act was so popular that she went on to appear with the Opry on both radio and TV for the next 50 years. And younger audiences got to know her from the popular TV show HEE HAW, where she appeared for more than 20 years, from 1969 to 1991, when sadly a stroke ended her career. She then lived out the remaining years of her life in a Nashville nursing home. In 1975, while she was still alive, she was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. So how many of you remember and were fans of Minnie Pearl? And who else besides me thinks this comedic icon of the 20th century should at least have her stage name here on her headstone? And I also think her signature line would make a perfect epitaph. So I think before I head on to my next destination, which, big surprise, is another cemetery, I think it's about another 15-20 minutes, maybe half hour from here. Definitely putting on the mileage here in Tennessee. The cemeteries are not close to one another at all. I think what I'll do, I'll drive around so you can see a little bit of this cemetery and some of the historic markers, and I think maybe I'll walk around a little bit as well and just see if I can see anything interesting up close and personal rather than just driving through. So anyway, let's go see who else we can see here in the cemetery. Most of the cemeteries in Southern California where I live just have flat grave markers that are pretty generic and uniform. So exploring older cemeteries like this one is always more interesting, and kind of ironic too. Some of the most famous people who have ever lived are buried in Southern California and have very nondescript grave markers, while completely unknown everyday people who are buried in cemeteries like this one have impressive monuments and statues to their lives and accomplishments. It's kind of interesting to see how dramatically burial traditions can change over time. Well, this is really sad. Two kids who both died very young, and they both have the same last name. One in 2007, one in 2015. Here's some other interesting headstones in this cemetery. So I can't really tell if families have donated these signs to make the sections easier to find, or if they've actually sponsored a section within the cemetery to keep it mowed and trimmed and manicured. I wonder if it's something common that people do back here. I don't recall seeing anything like this before. There's a guy over here going from grave to grave, placing flags on veterans' grave sites for the upcoming Memorial Weekend. That's really nice. It's nice when people volunteer to do things like that. I'm assuming he looks like he's volunteer. He doesn't look like he works here. But during this month-long road trip that I took last year in 2019, I took thousands and thousands of photos and videos, and somewhere along the line, the footage of my drive through the cemetery got lost or misplaced or stuck in the wrong folder. So unfortunately, this visit is a little bit shorter than it was meant to be. Hundreds of people normally work on short films like this, but when you're a vlogger, you do it all on your own. So that's part of the challenge and the fun. Since I'm uploading this video today on Mother's Day, I thought I would share these images of my mom that I was able to find from a Mother's Day breakfast back in 2013. That's her in the middle.
Happy Mother's Day to you.
Here we are. Where are we? At the
Mountain
Quail Cafe.
Unless I say it, it's Quail Hollow.
For as long as I can remember, I've been coming to Quartzsite every year on Mother's Day to take my mom out to breakfast. And it usually turns into a group event with friends and family as well. It's always been her favorite meal of the day, and mine too. My road trip back to Minnie Pearl's final resting place started last year on Mother's Day. My first stop was Quartzsite, and once again we had breakfast here at the Mountain Quail Cafe. On this Mother's Day, it was just me and my mom and her roommate John. John was 80 years old and always seemed to be in good spirits and good health, but sadly about a month after I returned from this road trip, he went into the hospital and died a couple of weeks later. These are selfies that I took of all three of us that day. 3 months after John died, my mom had her stroke, which left her with severe aphasia and some mental impairment. Instead of going out this year for breakfast, I decided to make her favorite meal, which is scrambled eggs and bacon. She doesn't really eat much anymore, but it's the one thing that she'll eat every bite of. Fortunately, her stroke didn't affect her much physically, so even in her difficult situation, she still has many things to be grateful for on this Mother's Day. And this week I want to give a shout out and thank my latest Patreon supporters, Karen Arsenault, Double AUB, and Adam. Thank you all for helping to make future trips like this one possible. I really do appreciate it. Until our next trip down memory lane together, happy travels everyone, and happy Mother's Day.